Hello and welcome back to another episode of NT Movie Reviews, coming at you online and mostly in print format at nicktiffany.com, in audio format and podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube and all the fun social medias at NT Movie Reviews. We are back this year with more SIFF coverage than what feels like ever, or what feels like at least in a long time. Plenty of interviews, tons of film scenes so far. It has just been such a great experience. This is the 51st year of the Seattle International Film Festival. Going to the opening night was a blast, as always. So fun to be surrounded by fans of film, other film critics, people coming here to celebrate all sorts of different art styles within film, short stories, documentaries, so many different Indigenous peoples films. SIFF always reaches far and wide as far as the submissions they take, the stories they want to tell that are universal, and bringing in so many directors, so many filmmakers who represent so many different people and stories across the world. And so it's just a huge, huge pleasure to be doing this again this year, to be covering as a member of a press. Opening night was great. Good wine, good people, great time, a great film. We're about a week or so into the film festival right now. We're still this last weekend with a lot of heavy hitters coming out, actually, as well as an entire week online. So if you are in the Washington area, SIFF Online is a great way to see some of these films as well. You can get digital tickets, you can stream them. It's something that they do that is just super smart, super cool. It's such an accessible film festival for casual fans of film as well. You could go up to the box office and buy a ticket for some of the films we'll be talking to you about this weekend. So, it's just a great opportunity, and it's just always a blast to be covering this. So this is going to be the first of two capsule style reviews. I think maybe 14 or 15 films in so far. Probably got another 5 or so to go. We're going to be trying to go through 10 pretty quickly here. Just give you a quick blurb on the movie, some of my initial thoughts. There will be full reviews coming, but with all the different interviews, the number of films that we'll be covering here, the longer reviews will come. It might just take a little bit of time. But you can also check out some of our prior coverage from past festivals, as well as some interviews that we've already got uploaded this year for a few different films. So without further ado, we'll jump in. We'll go alphabetical order. And like I said, these are capsules. We'll try to bang them out. There'll be full thoughts later. If any of these sound interesting to you, absolutely look them up. So many of them are still playing this weekend for SIFF, and if they've already played, you should definitely add them to your radar. One of the first films that I had missed, actually, I believe at the Vancouver International Film Festival, it had played in Toronto. It's a film called 40 Acres. And music veteran Archie Thorne, directing SAG nominee Danielle Deadwyler, who you may have seen recently in The Piano Lesson, in a speculative fiction thriller about a black family in a starved post-Civil War near future who must defend their farm from invading cannibals. If that doesn't grab you right there, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you don't like movies. Maybe you don't like action. This film jumped out at me immediately. Danielle Deadwyler is a fantastic actress, and this idea of a civil war that's erupted, taking care of this farmland, training up her kids, very military-like. There's a lot of really badass moments. It's very curious to see how race, how hunger, how survival, and how deceptive people can be when the end of the world approaches. Danielle Deadwyler, she's a badass. There's some maybe cheesy moments here or there with some of the kids, or maybe some typical end of the world plots that you might see. But by and large, I had a blast with this movie. Really don't look at it as a cannibal film. There are aspects of that. I was expecting something that was going to be super gory and gross. I don't know, maybe. It's not like that. This, I would say, is far more action, thriller, and just a great time, truly. And similarly, moving into our second film, a documentary by the name of Bar, which has to do with the Beverage Alcohol Resource Group in a 5-day program that this group puts on at the Culinary Institute. And Don Hardy, who's back at SIFF after his film Pick of the Litter played here in 2018, brings us this perfect cocktail of a documentary focusing on a bunch of students who are going to be going through this 5-day program. As a former bartender myself and a fan of the Somm films about the master sommelier tests and this whole world of how you can identify a spirit or a wine based off of smell. You can break down the region by taste, minerality, all of these different aspects. So those master sommelier films, they can be a little, those are far more daunting. So something in the realm of bartending and cocktails, there's a lightness to it. And there's a fun aspect, I think, to it too, because people love craft cocktails. And this was a really great way to shine a light on bartenders, on service industry, on these people who really do live to serve. They have a great quote about almost having this sickness where you're not going to feel great about yourself unless you can help someone else feel better. And that is kind of some of what the name of the game is there. And it's just a fun look at all these different diverse groups of people who bring in a wealth of knowledge and so much worldliness from the interactions that they have. If you love food, if you love drinks, if you love documentaries, I mean, you really can't ask for something better than this. When they say perfect cocktail, it was awesome. So much of how the program leads with kindness and the education, you just don't see stuff like this too often. And I was just really, really impressed with the program and a huge fan of the people that you kind of follow along on this journey. So Barb will be playing on the SIFF Digital, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I also did an interview with Don Hardy that'll be coming out leading up to the online at the festival, so definitely keep an eye out for that too. It was a great conversation. And speaking of another film that I had the pleasure and the privilege of doing an interview for with director Jessica Earnshaw, the film is Baby Doe. Nearly 30 years after Gail abandoned her newborn son in the woods and returned to her conservative Christian life, the police came and arrested her for infanticide. This film, very heavy subject matter, deals with pregnancy denial, which is something that psychologists have not spent a lot of time on enough to understand, really. This film deals with religion, it deals with shame, it deals with communication on so many levels, and people feeling like they have someone in their life that they could tell if they were to get pregnant when they were younger. The most astounding thing is that when we meet Gail, she has 3 grown adult children. She is an avid member in her church community. You know, what the crime was, almost 3 decades back to who she is now feel completely different. But when you begin to examine the circumstances, so much of it is not black and white, which is unfortunately how the case kind of felt like it was presented out in Ohio in a more conservative area. And Jessica Earnshaw, to her credit, she presents the facts as they are. You do spend time with Gail and her family, and you are allowed to feel emotional connections to them. You're allowed to wrestle with, I know that this is true, but I also know that this is true. And it makes for such a complex story that is sure to spark conversation, and I think it absolutely should, because like so many cases in the legal system, the punishment does not always feel like it fits the crime, especially with the severity of awful crimes and people out there. This is where case by case basis and really trying to get an understanding of background matters so much. Baby Doe, incredibly affecting, great, great, truly one of the best things I've seen at this festival so far. Please keep an eye out for it. It's powerful filmmaking, great storytelling, necessary storytelling. And like I said, I've got an interview up for that with director Jessica Earnshaw. So you can find that YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find most of our stuff already. Moving into another film, which I'm looking forward to speaking to a cast member for this weekend, is a film called Beginnings from Denmark. Life is full of unexpected twists. Anne and Thomas must redefine the parameters of their relationship when, just as they're about to finalize their divorce and tell their 2 daughters, Anne suffers a stroke. This movie, immediately from the premise, certainly had me raising an eyebrow. The circumstances around it certainly were curious. This idea of you're approaching a love story at the end of a marriage, and as it goes within sickness and in health, something happens, and the husband, instead of maybe moving in with the mistress or moving in with his new girlfriend, obviously helps his family and stays there for his wife and helps her. And it's just a really intriguing look at such an emotionally confusing time in 2 people's lives as they're trying to continue to raise their kids and not quite tell them what's going on. and maybe not able to take care of herself in a lot of the ways that she was used to. And so there's friction there. There is confusion. There is mistrust. There is a lot of complex emotion going on here at work, but it is a really beautiful and fascinating story of two people, perhaps coming back to each other in a way. Very, very great film. Totally, I don't want to say came out of left field for me, but for how I thought the story would go, I was just really, really impressed with the progression of the characters, with the rawness and the authenticity in the performances, and in what a lot of those uncomfortable situations might be like for all of them. So Beginnings, very, very great film out of Denmark. Keep an eye out for it. Right along, a film from Amanda Kramer, By Design. Playful provocateur Amanda Kramer, Please Baby Please, and SIFF's 2024 So Unreal, has crafted another audacious performance art-based piece of absurdist satire about fetish and desire, as a lonely woman played by Juliette Lewis swaps bodies with a chair, only to find comfort in life. Performance art-based absurdist satire about fetish and desire. It checks all of those boxes. This film is absurd in a lot of ways, and you really have to allow yourself to get behind the concept of this woman essentially transferring her life force into this chair. A woman who, by all accounts, has felt disregarded, unseen by friends of hers, men, whomever in the real world, doesn't feel desire, and it just fawns over this chair. And as soon as her spirit enters it, all of these people begin to fawn over this chair. And, internally she feels desire, she feels seen. People can tell that there's something special about this chair. And a lot of it is a critique and a satire in the way that, yes, sure, that we fetishize things, or the fact that we put so much stake into something that's immaterial, that's tangible, that, has no value to a human soul, perhaps. And so where she derives her value as the chair is certainly fascinating. Everybody commits to the bit. I don't want to say bit, but the story. Maybe not entirely my cup of tea. It was certainly worth watching for the absurdity of it. I don't know that everyone will enjoy it for that, but very curious. They play with some fun ideas. They play with a lot of true ideas, and there are some very funny moments. But again, some of you are just kind of like, oh, okay. It feels like a very SIFF. It's on brand for the Seattle market. I'll say that. Moving on to another film that I'll actually be playing this weekend and during the SIFF Digital Festival is a film called Color Book, directed and written by David Fortune. I do have an interview with David, I believe, that just went up today, talking about this movie, which I really, really enjoyed. He had won the Directors to Watch Award at the 2025 Palm Springs International Film Festival for this black and white debut sensation about a recently widowed black father who just wants to take his young, disabled son to his first professional baseball game. William Catlett plays Lucky, a newly single father after his wife passed, and his son Mason, who has Down syndrome, wants to go to this baseball game. He wants to go out and have an experience, and it is a quietly beautiful portrait of fatherhood, of resiliency. It speaks to so many aspects of the weight that men carry emotionally that we should let go of, but is a lot easier said than done. It speaks to needing to have people in your life who check in on you, who are comfortable with checking in on you in so many ways. And it does speak in a lot of ways to maybe some of the disconnect of being a parent and having assumptions of what your kids might want or what they're looking to get out of some end goal, in this case, getting to this baseball game. But in so many ways, these little moments are sort of overlooked, especially for the children. And so it's just a wonderful, wonderful look at how the two of them make their way from the metro Atlanta area through many means of transportation, seeing different parts of the city, and running into friends along the way. It's a beautiful movie. The performances are so powerful. Definitely check out the interview. We just had such a wonderful, wonderful chat about the movie, about masculinity. I'm really looking forward to seeing him this weekend at the festival. Another documentary that I knocked out, that I watched, that I enjoyed to a degree, is Flamingos, Life After the Meteorite, which follows the titular animal, the Caribbean flamingo, around the Yucatan Peninsula. Filmed over 9 years, which is incredibly impressive. This film details this migration back for breeding season. And in this whole meticulous way that it has to happen, the conditions need to be right. The water needs to be prevalent. There needs to be enough mud so that they can build this protection for their eggs. And with global warming, the changing of the tides, it's become trickier and trickier for these flamingos to breed properly, and new threats might await them. In a lot of ways, it's a curious look at the nature of flamingos, how they breed, this kind of singular and universal pattern that they all follow and are called back to find this breeding ground to make this happen. How they breed is quite funny. They're such a curious looking bird. Obviously, I think everybody can agree on the fact that flamingos are a little weird, and just so watching them nuzzle up, watching how they can move their necks, you think their legs are about to snap all the time. They're funky. There's great poetry in the background of the film, great music. At 83 minutes, weirdly, I felt like they could have perhaps truncated it a little bit more into almost a short, perhaps, because it wants to tell a longer story, I feel like, but the content is not necessarily there. And while I don't mind watching birds flying and spectacular views, it felt like with a little bit of trimming, they could have something really great on their hands. But flamingos, if you're a fan, you gotta watch this. It will be playing this weekend, and it'll also be playing during the digital part of the festival as well. So going back to opening night, we're going to be talking about the movie Four Mothers, which interestingly has, started a new trend for SIFF perhaps. Last year with Thelma, this year with Four Mothers. Something about older women, the grandmas in particular. It's a safe bet for SIFF, I think. It was crowd pleasing this time around. Everybody had a great time who was in attendance, and it certainly doesn't push the envelope too far. The film is about Edward, a struggling Irish author on the verge of literary success when his queer romance young adult novel gains massive buzz ahead of a U.S. release. His agent and publisher keep pushing him to take advantage of the moment, commit to a book tour with media appearances in the U.S., pretty much all but guaranteeing a bestseller. However, he is the sole caregiver to Alma, his endearingly feisty mother, whose recent stroke has left her disabled and unable to speak except through an iPad. He feels conflicted about leaving her, even if only for 2 weeks. And when a prospective plan to get one of his best mates to care for her backfires, when all three, taking inspiration from his idea, abruptly take off for the Pride Festival on sun-drenched Gran Canaria at Maspalomas Pride, leave their own mothers behind, and Edward in charge. Over the chaotic weekend that follows, people-pleaser Edward must juggle his burgeoning career paths with the care of four eccentric, combative, and wildly different ladies, none of whom really get along with one another. So already, the premise is great. You can hardly take care of yourself and do things for yourself, and of course the one time you go to do it, and now you're taking care of four moms. If that isn't life hitting you over the head and just saying, yeah, so what are you going to do? And what does Edward do as a people pleaser? He takes care of them. The film is very touching. It's very sweet. It delves a little bit into pride aspects, into some of what it is like over in Ireland to be these young gay men, to feel like they belong. And the book that he's talking about in the film obviously speaks to some of his upbringing and his experiences there. And when I say that this film was a safe bet for SIFF and that it plays it safe, it's that perhaps I wanted it to dig a little bit deeper into Edward and his background. It's a blast spending time with the mothers. They're cheeky, they're funny, they have very real moments. I don't know, I enjoyed it. I laughed a lot. I left with a smile, but I just wanted a little bit more. I feel like, especially towards the end of the film, it was like, I know things are wrapping up here based on the conversations being had or the really slow transition towards the end, and it was like, there's got to be more story left, though, right? Now, a film that did not leave anybody, I think, well, I don't want to say anybody wanting more, but a film that really just went balls to the walls and put it out there was Fuck Toys. I mean, clearly it's in the name. Anna Ram writes, directs, and stars in this campy, vividly pastel-colored romp about a woman who embarks upon a sex worker odyssey through Trash Town with her non-binary friend to break a terrible curse that's befallen her. This was the South by Southwest Special Jury Prize winner, and I had the opportunity to speak with director Anna Ram when she was here. caught the film when she did a Q&A that night. It absolutely tore the house down. This movie, people wear their hearts on their sleeves, performers wear their hearts on their sleeves, the characters, the actors, everything about this film just feels so open, so fresh, so unafraid in a lot of ways, delving into kinks, into fetishes, into modern romance, into this fool's journey instead of the hero's journey, digging into tarot cards and readings. There's so much confidence in the filmmaking here. It's kind of nuts. It's shot on 16 millimeter film, so watching it in a movie theater with the grains, it just felt like it was out of another time. They shot on location down in Louisiana, and you've just got so many interesting and fascinating set pieces and the places that you go throughout the film. There is this sexiness, there is this curiosity that it's drenched with. There's also a lot of love and a lot of big emotion underneath a lot of that surface too. And there's just so much complexity to these characters. This is it's a cult style film that you really just don't see today, as Anna Perna put it herself. Watching it, really, it just felt like this has got to be from the past. With a few modern aspects to it, or some of the props, or some of the conversations, everything felt so assured throughout the whole film. They don't bat an eye saying or doing some of the things that they do. There's a casualness to it that just feels like, wow, it's a hell of a debut. I think it's a film that most audiences are really going to love. How much you're going to speak to that in public, who knows? That depends on your comfort levels. But Fuck Toys, it was awesome. You haven't seen anything like it, or if you have, it's been a very, very long time since a film I think is going to evoke the kind of reactions and responses that this is. So you absolutely need to keep an eye out for that. I'm still in the process of editing down that. It was one of the longer interviews that I did for the festival, so I am looking forward to sharing that. That will be coming next week. Great talk, great, great movie. And ending on another high note here, our 10th film to wrap things up is Tina. Tina. From Miki Magasiva comes this heartfelt and tuneful underdog story about Maretta, a grieving Samoan teacher who finds a new lease on life and connection to community when she forms a student choir at a wealthy school. Funnily enough, at the opening night festival, while waiting in line at the bar, it was an open bar this year, so we might have bumped into each other a couple of times. But while waiting for some line, I don't know if they cut me, maybe I cut them, but director Miki Magasiva and Beulah Kowale, who's one of the leading stars in the film, they were in line. We got to chatting for a little bit, and then I just kind of noticed, like, hey, I think I'm going to be talking to you guys actually this weekend, and just shared a drink, a little bit of conversation. They're just such wonderful dudes. Really looking forward to sharing that interview that should be coming tomorrow, actually. Just kind of finishing up the last touches on that. What a beautiful movie. From the moment at the press release for the festival, when they showed us the trailer for Tina, whether it was the connection to choir, whether it was the rich heritage of the Samoans that Maretta and her character is kind of bringing to all these other people in New Zealand, there was just so much that felt so moving already. The trailer's maybe a minute or so long, and I was just almost in tears watching the trailer, truthfully. So watching this movie, by the end of it, I told them I was bawling. I'm just wiping happy tears from my eyes. And this character, she had lost her daughter some years prior in the earthquake. She was someone who's heavily involved in her community, in the world of choir. It was this crisis of faith after losing the thing that was dearest to her. And to watch her pull herself out of it, but also be pulled out of it by some of these students, it is just such a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. In our conversation that we had, so much of this film pays a debt not only to mothers, but to teachers, to these educators who go above and beyond for students who, while it's easy to assume might have it easy, we don't know what people's lives are like behind the scenes. And speaking as someone whose mother is a teacher, and just seeing firsthand how far teachers will go to take care of their students. This film is a beautiful, beautiful tribute in so many ways. They talked about keeping the Samoan culture alive and bringing that while maintaining their New Zealand identity as well. The film is funny. It is exactly the kind of movie that the world needs right now. I saw the coolest clip coming out of SIFF for this film before the Q&A. Many Samoan and Polynesian peoples were at the screening for it, singing after the film. It was just the coolest thing to watch. I have no doubts that this film's going to be at the top of a lot of people's lists. Undoubtedly one of the best things I've seen at this festival so far. Please, please, please keep an eye out for Tina. Keep an eye out for our interview as well. I think you're just going to fall more in love with these guys. I cannot wait to continue to see what they do from here. And like so many of the films I just talked about, it's the best part about this festival is getting to beat the drum for films that need to be seen by audiences. In theaters if you can. But again, you've got to support independent film. You've got to support movies. It's the coolest thing to be able to talk about them, to talk with people about the process. SIFF has just been so good to me for so many years. So it's just a blessing again to be able to do this, to share these interviews, sharing different perspectives, and just shining a light on a lot of films that might not otherwise get it. So as always, you can find us NT Movie Reviews, nicktiffany.com. There's going to be a part 2 of this coming. 10 more movies. Somehow, some way, we're going to do it. Keep an eye out for more of our interviews and our coverage from SIFF. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.